Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Runjun and I am from the Business and Industries Engagement Team, Global Division 3, Singapore Business Federation, and I'll be your host for today. The festival is part of the program of Global Connect at SPF, which is our globalization initiative in partnership with Enterprise Singapore. On this note, I would also like to thank our principal partner, Convera, on behalf of SPF, for their shown support to the entire festival initiative for the second year. Formerly Western Union Business Solutions, Convera is now considered as the largest non-bank B2B cross-border payments company in the world. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. To ensure that we will have a smooth webinar over the next 90 minutes, please take note of the following house rules. All information provided in this webinar is for your general information only and do not contain nor convey any type of legal advice. All the materials presented in this webinar belongs to the organizers and speakers. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on SPF's social media channels. You will be muted by default when you join this webinar. If you have any questions, you can send it to globalconnect@spf.org.sg, and the presentation deck will be sent to you after the webinar. For the program today, we will have Mr. Will Longhurst, Head of Business Development, HSBC, to share on how green financing works, cost savings of green financing, and type of renewable energy projects funded. Next, we will have Mr. Camillus Young, CFO, New Energy, to share about his insights on project financing. After which, we will have Mr. Lee Tong Yi, Managing Director of Lam Hong Renewables, to share about his company's case study. Last but not least, we will have Mr. Kelvin Tay, Managing Director, Future Mobility, and CEO of Blue SG, to share about his company's case study. To start today's session, let me quickly walk you through SPF and our globalization initiative, Global Connect at SPF. Global Connect at SPF is an initiative that has been formulated in assistance to Singapore companies that are looking to internationalize for the first time, as well as companies that are intending to expand and deepen their presence in overseas markets. Global Connect SPF helps Singapore companies to first learn about the country and the business opportunities it presents through sharing of useful resources like curated market information, advisories on free trade agreement, and structured training through workshops and webinars. Second, to land business deals and investment projects through B2B matching, facilitate market and business development through identifying the right market for businesses and assessing the business capabilities. We currently have 3 SPF overseas offices called Singapore Enterprise Centre, with plans for more in the future, set up in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City, and Bangkok to provide on-the-ground facilitation and in-market assistance. Lastly, we assist Singapore companies to set up a viable business presence in those markets to help grow and integrate with local networks and strengthen their presence. Next, we'll conduct a poll to explore your interest on questions relating to financial grants. Next up, our first speaker will be Mr. Longhurst, who will be telling us more about green financing. Will leads business development for HSBC's commercial bank in Singapore, covering growth initiatives, strategic programs, balance sheet management, and sustainable finance. As part of his role, Will covers client initiatives ranging from SME-focused programs, as well as driving revenue and coverage projects for large corporate and MNC clients. Prior to his current role, Will led business development for the SME business in Singapore, including the launch of HSBC's first SME green loan and signing key external partnerships in the sustainability space. Mr. Will, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today and to SPF for organising this interesting discussion. I'm very happy to be here this morning talking about sustainable finance. As I'm sure everyone knows, there's a huge amount of uncertainty and volatility happening in the markets at the moment. And so being able to be here talking about one constant, which is sustainability, and something that we see as growing in the future no matter what happens externally is a pleasure as always. I will try and cover three things in the 10 minutes or so I have with you this morning. So firstly, a little bit around what is sustainable finance, setting some baseline understanding of what we mean when we use that phrase. Secondly, talking a little bit about the benefits, why you should think about sustainable finance for your business, how it might help you. And then if there's time, I'll share a little bit around some of the projects which HSBC has funded around the region, which may be of interest. So if we just flip to the first slide, please. So first, just to set some understanding for everyone, sustainable finance, green finance are often used interchangeably, but there is an important distinction which I'll elaborate on now. Sustainable finance really covers everything that relates to environmental, social, and governance criteria being introduced into business, lending, or investment decisions. So sustainable finance is very much the broad umbrella that you should be thinking about in this whole area, and generally aligns to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which includes climate change as well as a number of other factors. So sustainable finance is the broad umbrella of everything we're talking about. Green finance, as the name suggests, is a subset within sustainable finance, which is specifically focused on environmental financing or projects that have a positive environmental benefit. So I think helpful just to set the scene a little bit around what we mean by sustainable finance and what we mean by green finance, as I know these can often be used interchangeably. Okay, if we skip to the next slide. I just want to spend a moment talking about some of the example instruments or products that are captured by that umbrella definition of sustainable finance. So I'm sure many of you will have heard of some, if not all of these, but this is the sort of range of products that we see at the moment. You start from simple green loans, which have been around for a while. You've then got sustainability linked loans. You're moving now increasingly into social bonds. The area of trade finance is catching up with traditional term lending, and we've seen green and sustainable trade finance instruments, as well as initiatives to support on the liability side as well as the asset side. So green deposits, green investments. Now, not all of these will be relevant to all companies at all stages of their growth, but I'll focus on a couple of these today just to set the scene a little bit for you. So if we move to the next slide. Again, when we think about green finance, there's also kind of two lenses to look at it. So there's banks providing or other investors providing financing for green projects that deliver that environmental benefit. But there's also the support of banks and other institutions for public policies that are encouraging more environmentally friendly policies, reduction of environmental damage, increased initiatives to adapt and mitigate the impacts of climate change. So move to the next slide. So this is probably an important one to spend a little bit of time on. So when we talk about green loans, which is a term that's used a lot, I want to be very clear about what exactly that means and how they work. So essentially, green loans are designed to support green projects. So a green loan is designed to match very specifically to a green project. So a company will identify a green project, perhaps that's a renewable energy project, perhaps it's a green building project, and then they'll work with their bank to structure a green loan that's specifically designed to support that green project. So if you see on the screen, you've got the bank at the top providing the financing. The green loan then comes in and specifically aligns to a green project. Now that could be a new project, it could be an existing project, but it has to be tied to a green project. So we can't give you a green loan for kind of general working capital or kind of an undefined future initiative. It has to be tied to a green project. And then what the banks look at is, how do we know it's a green project? And as you can see on the left and the right, one of the things we often look at is there a green label available? Is there a certification? Is there an external opinion? Has a consultancy firm been involved? Can someone prove to us that this project truly is green? And when we say truly green, what we mean is that there's a genuine environmental benefit to doing the project. So to use renewable energy, if you build a wind turbine, there's an obvious environmental benefit to doing that. And we can quantify that and use that to support the design of the green loan. So very simple terms, green loan supports a green project. The banks provide the financing, that can be new or existing, and we have to have some way of measuring and proving that it's green. We flip to the next slide. So as I mentioned on the earlier slide, the key thing really is to identify a green project. Without a green project, you can't have a green loan. Without the green loan, you don't have the green finance. So we at HSBC have defined 12 broad categories of green projects. And this ranges from obvious things such as green buildings, renewable energy projects, to newer areas such as clean transportation, sustainable water management, perhaps alternative proteins or sustainable use of natural resources. So these 12 categories are broad areas for you to be thinking about when you're considering introducing sustainability or sustainable finance into your business. As I'll touch on a little bit later, some of these areas are more advanced than others. So if we look at Singapore as an example, green buildings are well established. They've been around for a while, and Singapore is really a leader in green buildings. What Singapore is now talking about more and more is this circular economy. So how can we look at domestic food security? How can we reuse, reduce, recycle some of the things which are being produced and used in Singapore? So 12 different categories. There's millions of individual projects which could fall under these categories. And we're also very happy to look at new and other projects as they come along as well. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavor of the types of things you can finance with green finance. If we flip to the next slide. Now, this is the principles under which banks, HSBC included, assess green loans. And the one I really want to call out is use of proceeds. I've made the point already, but this is really the key thing I want everyone to take away is if you want to access green financing, you think you've got, you think you've got an opportunity in your business. The key thing is that you need a green project. I've talked about what those green projects could be, but you have to have the green project. That becomes the use of proceeds for the green loan. And that's what we structure everything around. Once we've got the green project, we can then look at how we assess it and how we manage the proceeds and how we report and all of those nice things. But the key really is around find the right project for your business. Okay, we flip to the next slide. I talked about green loans. The other thing you might have heard more about recently are sustainability linked loans. So I want to spend a moment just talking about the difference. A green loan is to finance a specific green project, as I've said. A sustainability linked loan isn't tied to a direct project, but instead is linked to a set of broader sustainability targets. So for example, big MNC, they want to increase the percentage of renewable energy that they use in their supply chain. We could set specific targets around them moving from 10 to 20 to 30%, whatever it may be. As they deliver against those targets, we're then able to reduce the margin on their loan to incentivize them to continue on their sustainability journey. So they're quite different to green loans. There's no specific project. It's broader in terms of delivering a set of pre-agreed targets, and you get a margin benefit if you deliver it. So understandably, because of that margin benefit, sustainability linked loans is an area that a lot of our companies we work with are very interested in. And we've got some nice case studies we can share. So it's an important difference, and hopefully that's clear to people. Green loans is for maybe one or two specific green projects. Sustainability linked loans are much broader. They cover generic, wider categories of targets, and then we set very specific KPIs for each company within that. Okay, if we move ahead, what might those targets be? Here are some examples. So perhaps a company commits to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Perhaps they commit to increase how much renewable energy they use or reduce the water consumption, or perhaps source their raw materials from a more sustainable source. So these are some of the KPIs you might be thinking about. And as I said earlier, what the bank will do is we'll sit with you, agree the right targets. So agree on water consumption, for instance. If you reduce it from X to Y to Z, what kind of margin benefit will we give you on the sustainability linked loan? This is just a snapshot. There's lots of other KPIs, lots of other example metrics that we can measure, but this hopefully gives you a bit of a sense of some of the things the banks will look at when we structure a sustainability linked loan. Okay, next slide. Again, same as the green loan principles, sustainability linked loans have their own principles. I won't go through this in detail. The one I want to call out is, as I said, we have to set KPIs and targets across some of those areas. And the really important things, those targets have to be ambitious and they have to show a genuine improvement. So if you reduce your water consumption by 1%, for example, how material and ambitious is that? We would want to see something more like 15, 20% to show that it's really a material improvement in the sustainability focused metric. So as you go away and think about projects, think about perhaps the metrics you want to focus on, just bear that in mind. It needs to be something tangible, something that's easy to measure, something that's ambitious. Okay, moving on. So that is a very quick whistle-stop tour through green loans versus sustainability-linked loans. Hopefully you've got a sense of the difference between the two, which one might be the right fit for your business for any project or any specific time. Obviously, very happy to have a conversation about specific opportunity or examples that you think you might have, and we can perhaps pick that up afterwards. But the big question is, well, what's the benefit of doing either one of these structures or products? We've got 5 on the screen here, which I'll run through very quickly. Making your business more sustainable means driving efficiency, reducing waste, and obviously what that means is better margins. The less you waste, the more efficient your business is, the better your margin is, which is an obvious benefit straight away. We also know that companies that are becoming more sustainable will actually have opportunities to grow their revenues, both by doing more business with their existing customers, but also doing new business with new customers. And that could be new customers in your existing market, or even expanding into a new market or a new focus area. So opportunity for profit growth through efficiency, revenue growth through new markets. There's also avoiding a downside. So the earlier you get started on your sustainability journey, really that's about future-proofing your business for the transition, which we know is coming. We can see governments more and more using both the carrot and the stick in terms of regulation and incentives. And so you want to make sure that your business is set up for the future so that you don't get impacted by regulation as it changes. Maybe I'll flip through the next slide without covering the rest of those. Very quickly, what are we seeing around the region? Headline message, sustainable finance is growing really quickly. Singapore's leading the way, but many of the markets in ASEAN are catching up. The 2021 numbers continue this trend irrespective of the COVID impact. So lots of activity across the region. We can see it continuing to grow, and Singapore really taking a leading position. Next slide, please. Where's the money going? No surprise, I'm sure for many of you, most of the sustainable finance that's being raised to date is going to green buildings and energy projects. So renewable energy projects specifically, of course. So well over 70% of the money that's been raised to date is funding either green buildings or renewable energy projects. So if you want to think about where the opportunities lie, those are the biggest areas at the moment. And certainly renewable energy, we think, is a sector that across ASEAN and the wider APAC region is going to be very exciting going forward. Moving on. Okay, this will be my last slide, and I know I'm running up against time for the other speakers, but I just wanted to share 4 very quick examples of when we talk about supporting clients with sustainable finance or green loans, and specifically in the renewable space, what are the kind of things we've seen happening? So 4 examples here, we've supported with trade finance for companies involved in renewable energy generation. We've supported with import loans for companies that are procuring raw materials to build solar panels. Similarly, we've supported with sustainable finance for Indian names looking to import the raw materials to build wind turbines, as well as looking at smaller value, shorter term financing for solar and wind projects in Malaysia. So I won't cover all the detail of this, but what I wanted to leave you with is a sense that lots of opportunity across many different areas in sustainable finance for renewable energies, lots of opportunities across the region. Now, opportunities don't have to be focused on the producers of renewable energy. Even if your business just consumes renewable energy, but we can still have a conversation about how we can support with financing. So maybe I'll leave you with 3 final thoughts or 3 takeaways that I would like you to have from the brief sharing this morning. Firstly, sustainable finance is simple, so don't be intimidated by all the terminology, the frameworks. The fundamentals of it are simple. You know, look for a project that's green, look for a clear target around sustainability, and the banks will be able to work with you. Secondly, sustainable finance can be cheaper. I talked about the margin benefit, and it can also help your business become bigger, more efficient, more resilient for the future. And thirdly, the most important thing, I guess, from my selfish banking perspective, if you've got questions, you've got opportunities, you're not sure about whether it could be sustainable, you're not sure about what to do next, you're not sure about how to take that first step, come and talk to HSBC, go and talk to your existing banks, just have that conversation and get started. The banks are building really good knowledge and expertise in these sectors now, and we would love to have a conversation with all of you and see what the opportunities might be for your businesses. So with that, I will thank you for your time listening, and if there's time for Q&A at the end, happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Will, for the insightful presentation, and good to know that Singapore is still the green financing hub for the region. Our second speaker is Mr. Camillus Young, CFO of New Energy. Camillus studied accountancy in Nanyang Technological University and possesses an MBA from Manchester Business School. He worked in multinational corporations like Accenture and Royal Dutch Shell, While in Accenture, he was involved in a landmark merger in the local banking scene between UOB and OUB. In Shell, Camillus has worked in downstream, upstream, and trading businesses. Subsequently, he ventured out and became a Series A investor in Sunseap, Singapore's leading renewable energy company, well known for its rooftop solar, utility-scale projects in the region, and landmark renewable energy credit transactions with Apple and Microsoft. He now runs his own advisory firm, A New Energy, which focuses on the energy value chain, which covers LNG, renewable energy, decarbonization, fundraise, and market connect. Camillus has strong knowledge in financial planning and analysis practices, business improvement initiatives, investment financials, project management, and investing. Mr. Young, please.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to SBF for inviting me, and thanks everyone for attending and your time today. I think William gave a great introduction and overview, so I'll try to make this presentation with a bit more specifics and a different lens of what financing involves. Trying to click on the next slide. So with a quick intro of A New Energy. Next slide. Okay, so we are a small advisory, and the founders are basically myself and my partner Sunny, based in Thailand. We basically have gone from oil and gas, as you can see the logos, into renewables. So we cover ASEAN from Singapore and Bangkok. So what we do, our experience is largely in renewables, starting with solar, and as you can see on the upper part of the slide, involved in a lot of Sunseap related projects, which is first solar farm in Cambodia, a very large one in Vietnam, also close Series C funding in Sunseap, and I'll touch a bit about that later. And it was mainly with Shell, Banpu, and a local company called ISO Team back then. And at the same time, I think business models are very important to financing as well. So as you can see at the latter part of those bullet points, the virtual PPAs or the bundle and unbundled energy transactions with Apple and Microsoft are important in certain business considerations as well. We cover markets from Singapore to Malaysia, and these are the current focus areas. More recently, we're developing hydrogen-related projects. It's still challenging, but we're working with some partners to explore what's best for a business model in the region, right? So in that list below are some of our existing projects that we focus on currently. So that gives you just a flavor of what we do and which part of the green value chain we are deeply involved in. So I'll go on to the next slide. So I think financing renewable energy projects comes in a combined form of debt and equity. So you can think of debt and equity similar to oxygen and nitrogen, which makes up air in the environment. So basically, the general conditions for these two are bankable, what we call bankable inverted commas requirements, right? From perspective of sponsors, those who will, to put in equity for the project, off-takers who basically sign a long-term power purchase agreement with the solar wind asset, or even the hydrogen asset. So these are very unique so-called contracts, which are very long-term, 15 to 25 years to give it an elephant range, right? So hence there's a lot of discounted cash flows there, and it's long dated. Then you need to obviously ensure that you construct your asset well with the right EPCs and essentially have good contracts even relating to the land, and ensure that you have equator principles, which are those environmental practices that of best practice, right? And then there will be a lot of independent third parties that your projects need to be have involvement with, which are really grid studies, which are important to make sure that the cash flows from your asset are, are obviously evacuated into the grid, and the grid can take it. And then obviously, because we're talking about ESG, there are environmental and social considerations, because if you build a solar farm or wind farm on a big plot of land, you don't want to just chase people, you want to relocate them and ensure they are fairly compensated. And obviously the technical parts of your equipment, they all need to be tier 1 equipment, so that debt and equity investors have faith that these are equipment that will last the length of the entire PPA and maintain well. So in terms of financing, as I mentioned, there are two types. As you can see in the table, the equity, there's really direct equity, or M&A in essence, where certain regional investors will come in to buy a platform company. So I gave them some examples there, and then there are obviously different variants of mezzanine debt and convertible notes, right, which will help you at least put in have some form of equity or quasi-equity to start your project in terms of development costs and studies to get it to a certain, for example, shovel-ready stage. And as William shared a bit just now, there are a few examples. Likely most of the assets that are bankable will have a non-recourse debt provided by local banks like HSBC and even the DFIs like ADB and IFC. And if the so-called the project is a bit small, usually they need to be funded by equity, and then when they grow to a certain portfolio size, then you would refinance them out with recourse or non-recourse debt. So these are just to provide a quick overview that financing any sustainable asset that like solar or wind actually involves different layers and different options. So it's not just a plain vanilla process or consideration. These are just some examples of market examples of investment. So obviously I picked the one where I was involved in, which Shell invested in Sunseap back then in 2017. And recently the Sunseap entity got bought over a majority stake by EDPR, a Portuguese company. And then another example for market loans, as you can see, Singapore has Solar Nova projects all funded by local banks, and in different examples where DBS is involved in projects in the region as well. And on bonds, I think these are the examples that even the what we call the banks like Apple, they are very active in the US to have different kind of financial instruments or methods to be involved in renewable energy assets. Okay, so just to share this busy slide here, the main message is that the financing, whether debt or equity, it's really not a walk in the park, because it involves large sums and also having sustainability elements. There are a lot of considerations. So as you can see on the top part, you need to pick tier 1 suppliers in terms of your equipment, and also have tier 1 EPCs who can deliver the project and have the balance sheet to actually follow through in terms of the completion of the project. And a very big part in terms of financing and also giving assurance to the sponsors or the equity investors is involving independent engineers, lenders, technical advisors, even environmental advisors, where they will come in and QC your projects and ensure that you have done taken the necessary steps or documentation or risk mitigants to in place in terms of the project to be able to assure the lenders all the equity investors that everything is in a bankable state. And so they'll churn out, you know, a 100-pager report based on all aspects of the project to assure that the technical, environmental, and the cash flow and contractual parts are all best practice. Obviously, you have legal advisors who will be involved on the lenders and borrower side, and also review the long-term agreements from the EPC contract, the O&M contract. So it is a multi discipline aspect to finance. Definitely not a walk in the park. So the thing for organizations to consider is really getting your documentation right and in good order, so that you can open data rooms to basically pass to all these parties. Right, and you have obviously insurance and the insurance advisors there, and financial modelers, tax advisors, and obviously you have the banks who will come in to let you know what kind of loan that they can actually bring for your asset. So it's easy to talk about green financing, but it is definitely not a walk in the park. You have to get a lot of things right. You have to understand the key considerations, your documentation, whether your project is bankable, to be able to go through the journey and get a good term sheet and ultimate drawdown for it. Right. So that's a quick a detailed insight into what that involves. This is an example. This is a bit of a deep dive into an example term of debt financing, right? So you can see basic certain, depending on the project, the tenure can be pretty long dated or pretty short dated, subject to the conditions of the PPA and how your financing strategy is. I think it's a bit technical. The debt sizing criteria, obviously everybody wants 80-20, 80% debt and 20% equity, but that's really driven, at least on a solar basis, by P90 debt service coverage ratio. It's like buying a house. You won't have the debt be beyond a certain percentage of your salary. So that requires some advisors and modelers and also assessing the details of your contract and basically the quality of your project. So it's meant to give you a flavor of the requirements, and it is something that is you need to get right up front. And obviously the loans are subject to quite a lot of requirements on condition precedents and balance sheet requirements and quality. So as per the previous slide, we've seen that the advisors, the host of advisors there are meant to help you assure the bank and your equity investors on that the project is green and financeable confidently and comfortably by their credit comps. Right. So I think last slide here is really to share a bit of market trends. I think in terms of the renewable energy scene out there, basically there's a lot of solar projects and wind projects, and it's starting to get challenging as most countries shift to a bidding model, and when they bid, it tends to go to a very low bid price, and that will stress the cash flows and everything along the value chain to build the project. So just be aware that it's challenging times with headwinds from rising interest rates, inflation. So you really have to be confident of the project that you have and want to invest in. And we are now at a stage where the grids are starting to get full. So grid studies, curtailment, key considerations to ensure that you get the volume of the cash flows. I think to be careful, you need to pick pockets of opportunity, basically to invest in, or to, if you have your own factory, best thing to look at is your own rooftop. There are more and more examples of having an integrated view to increase returns, and also to have captive power within an industrial zone, or with a partner where, for example, CP Foods in Thailand has partnered with someone to develop projects together with them, and they have an asset base. Another example is GLP and Brookfield. where they look at logistic assets, logistic rooftop, and the fund manager or they come in to invest in a captive real estate, right? And I think given what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine situation, a lot of people countries have a hydrogen plan to have a bit of energy independence because it's about splitting water and making it into a fuel. However, it's still challenging in most parts of the world to bring the cost down, right? So it's a space to watch, and there is a lot of investment and attention to look at hydrogen, which is a very green fuel, but it's just the path to get there. It's still not easy, right? And obviously there are headwind and tailwinds. I guess the biggest one is the interest rate environment for a headwind. And then I suppose on a tailwind side, there are a lot of investors and financiers who are focusing on having green elements and being more sustainable. So hopefully that creates a lot of interest in green energy projects, being solar, energy efficiency, EV. So capital for sure has a preference for a greener environment. So that's essentially a tailwind that may help your projects, whatever they may be on the green space. All right. So I think I'll leave it as that. And I suppose for any project or any initiative, it's about you thinking whether that's really worth doing and putting your corporate resources around it to achieve the outcome that you want, together with partners like the equity and the banks who will provide your capital for you. Okay, so I think I've met my time already, so I'll leave it as that, and we can do any Q&A later about the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. The audience will find it useful to know the bankable requirements such as sponsors, off-takers, and power purchase agreement when considering to finance renewable energy projects. Our third speaker is Mr. Lee Tong Yi, Managing Director of Dam Hong Renewables. Mr. Lee is committed in bringing financial incentives to the forefront of adoption of such green solutions. Having spent some time in London, founding non-profit organizations both inside and outside of school, it has always intrigued him to find ways to bridge the knowledge attained from organizations with best practices that he has been fortunate enough to experience through the family business back in Singapore. First, it started with solar, with his own company, and he saw the immense benefits that he is able to reap from such an implementation and was determined to share this with others. Mr. Lee, please.
Hi, hello, good morning, everybody. Just wanted to ensure that I could swap out the slides that I prepared. Could you give control, or would you be able to go to the next slide? Hi, sorry, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. So anyways, just a quick introduction of the company. We are a 75-year-old company doing and being in the wholesale trade industry for the marine offshore equipments, so such as like wire ropes, anchor chains. So I'm in the fourth generation now, and I'm actually fortunate enough to be given financial support, family support as well, to pursue the development of solar projects in Singapore. Specifically, next slide, please. Sorry, yeah, just next slide. Yeah, specifically, we have actually done solar PV systems, LED, air conditioning, and all of this have one common goal, which we will try to reduce the brown energy consumption and increase green energy consumption, focusing on driving environmental impacts from the sustainable solutions, the suite of sustainable solutions that we provide. I will run you through in more details. So next slide, please. Yeah, so next again. Yeah, so part of our mission, like I mentioned, it's really to try to allow an opportunity to understand further the SMEs' requirements and pain points. Most often but not, we actually hear about would there be a financial incentive, or would say, for instance, interest rates be lower if we take on such green loans? Would there be any financial supports and grants from the government? So at the end of the day, being on the ground, speaking to customers, especially SMEs, we have identified a common pain point, of which financial incentives are what is what going to drive sustainable solutions adoption. So what I meant by that is it is in our mission to try to bridge that gap and try to, as much as possible, show the financial incentives and to show that these are all viable from the past projects that we have done, from the track records that we have, and from facts and data, in order to, I would use the word convince, or would rather put more assurance for the end user, for the SME specifically, to understand the real benefits of adoptions of such green solutions, like, for example, solar. Next slide, please. Yeah. So again, the vision is to be the preferred choice for adoption of such energy solutions across all sectors: commercial, residential, industrial. For now, we are more so focused on residential and industrial, as we are relatively a new company. Of course, we are open to any form of collaborations in the commercial space, but industrial and residential are our fortes for now. Next slide, please. Next slide. I prepared this slide specifically to just explain on a technical basis, like what the solar system would enclose. So when the PV system is installed on the roof of any building, the entire energy generated will be given first to the load, the building consumption. Anything excess would be exported to grid. How this model works is actually regulated by Singapore Power and EMA, and this entire agreement that we sign with clients lasts between 15 to 20 years. And this thing, as mentioned earlier by the speakers who have done a fantastic job in describing the entire industry and the entire space at large, is called the Power Purchase Agreement. So next slide, please. So just some pictures that I've prepared to highlight how some of these company installations would look like. On the top, we generally put solar panels and on top of the clip lock systems, which doesn't require much drilling, because again, with drilling on especially metal roofs, there tend to be a lot of fears and insecurities about roof leakage issues. So by doing so, it provides that assurance that we will not drill any holes. It's just a clip lock system to actually enhance and prevent any roof leakage. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some of the, just to highlight what I've mentioned earlier, some of the key value propositions from our mission and vision mentioned earlier that we hope to bring to all customers would be the less reliance on grid energy. This would mean that as we go on every year with high inflations, tariff rates, the usage of the Singapore Power Grid would increase in terms of third-party charges and etc. And a less reliance on grid energy would mean that you pay less. And most importantly, the reduction in electrical expense, mainly because of the consumption of solar energy. So you consume less from the grid, from your current electrical bills. You can expect to see about 40 to 50% cost reduction. And third, as we already know, in the latest budget 2022, the Minister of Finance have released data stating that it would increase from $5 to close to $50 by the end of this decade in 2030. Even at 2026, if I'm not wrong, it will hit 45. So that means that we are expecting a 9 to 10-fold increase in carbon taxes. So by adopting solar solutions, you pay less carbon taxes. It's a straightforward equation. And lastly, financial support, of which I won't go into detail, as I believe Mr. Young has mentioned earlier in his slides and have given a very good comprehensive breakdown of the space at large. So next slide, please. Yeah, so again, this slide is to show that we only use the most bankable solar panels belonging in the AAA pyramid at the top tier. What that means for the end users, for the customers, is simply that you will be assured by its quality, by its customer support, by its track record, company operation existence. So it's like the better, the higher quality panels would provide more assurances from many angles, and this is defined and determined by the Bloomberg company, which also would affect how much bank supports and financial supports me as a company could attain. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just some examples of how after installation we generally would put a PV system. So for our end users who are very concerned about what they are generating and what they are consuming on a daily basis, this actually changes accordingly and moves accordingly. So when it comes to also communicating these green initiatives to stakeholders, this actually greatly helps, and this is the common feedback that we get from our customers. And next slide, please. Yeah, these are more pictures. Next slide. Yeah, and also we do a little bit of EVC charging installation, and we work closely with Schneider. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, next slide. And all of these parts are the ones that we can actually get grants to support our customers. So what we do here is we will act as a sustainability consultant, a green consultant. We will identify which aircon can be efficientized, likewise for LED lightings. And as you can see, if you can maintain the British thermal units to be the same or better, but consume less energy, that would equal a higher percentage of grant. So simply, with very little effort, on the consumer side, we hope and aim to bridge this gap to allow them to adopt easily such solutions and to take on grants that they actually all want. Next slide. Yeah, so some of the before and after for LED lighting as well, because as we have noticed, many SMEs are not aware of the grant, and they are also not very aware that the lights are non-LED. By changing simply from a non-LED to LED light, you could also attain, a large percentage of grant support from the government sectors. Please, next slide, please. Yeah, even for the industrial sites, many places use halide, halogen lamps, and by changing to LED, of course, you consume less brown energy. And in fact, by doing all of these, by adopting all of these solutions, SME can expect a significant decrease in the reliance on brown energy consumption. And on top of the solar panel installation, where it will provide a huge amount of green energy to consume, so thereby reducing significantly the brown energy component. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, and I think last but not least, as we all know, this is really part of the 2030 plan for Singapore. So I hope that more SMEs will join me in the fight to align our nation's agenda with our own personal agenda, our own company's agenda as well. It's actually it's the whole system is actually very much connected, more connected than I initially expected. So anyways, the last thing that next slide, please. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, thanks for the just a quick introduction of the company and allowing me to speak on this webinar. But just to leave one last thing, to the table is that when it comes to financing, we have some overseas projects as well, and I won't go into the detail. I'm also very well aware of the 10 minutes time duration. So just to sum it up all, a lot of the financing and funding sources come from very varied sources. And depending on the country that you operate in, especially in Singapore or in overseas, especially in Europe, there could be very much different advantages and disadvantages from the usage of different sources of financing. So again, I believe Mr. Young has really did a great job in summarizing all the financial sources that you can get via debt, via equity, and we use multiple sources lah. So I end with on this note, and please feel free to reach out if there's any further queries or questions that you would like to direct at me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for the information sharing. It was insightful to learn about the benefits of solar PV system, such as the reduction of electricity expense. Last but not least, our final speaker will be Mr. Kelvin Tay, Managing Director, Future Mobility and CEO of Blue SG. Mr. Tay is the Managing Director of Future Mobility at GoBell Group and the Chief Executive Officer of Blue SG. He is instrumental in driving the group's innovation and transformation advancements in GoBell's core business and the creation of new revenue streams through venture building, with the vision of becoming the leading player in the future mobility landscape for smart city. Mr. Tay graduated from Cornell University and has worked for the Economic Development Board of Singapore for 8 years before moving into executive positions in the private sector, where he led more than 10 mergers and acquisitions across Southeast Asia and established a 10 million venture capital fund. Mr. Tay, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. So I'm well aware that I'm the last speaker, and I need to catch up some time. So I'll try my best to accelerate the presentation. Just as a quick introduction, I head Future Mobility in GoBell, and I'm the CEO of Blue SG. I thought that for today, I would share a bit more on the mobility perspectives when looking at green financing or sustainability initiatives. Sorry, the switching of the slides doesn't seem to work. Can I trouble you to move to the next slide, please? Next slide. Yeah, so a very quick introduction of GoBell. We are a 40-year-old family business. We started in 1980. We look at our business in two key buckets, namely the core business and future mobility. So I'll share a bit about the core business, and then the next slide will be on future mobility. Sorry, please go back one slide. Yeah, I'll share a bit more about the core business first. Half of our revenues comes from our distribution business, which is basically distributing of commercial vehicles as well as material handling equipment, or in layman terms, forklift. So the brands that we carry can be seen at the bottom of the slide. So I won't go into too much details on those. And in the leasing side of things, we have the largest commercial vehicle leasing fleet in Singapore, with a fleet of about 6,000 commercial vehicles. We have a fleet of 2,000 forklifts in Singapore, Malaysia, and Vietnam. And we also have a fleet of B2B car leasing business, which comprises about 2,000 cars. GoBell also has a financial services arm, which is basically a non-bank financial institution. So we do also play on the financing side of things. And we have given out about $1 billion of loans since inception. Our loan book is at about 300 million, 350 at any point in time, with a very low default rate. Moving on to future mobility, can I trouble you to move to the next slide, please? So riding on the domain expertise that GoBell has built up over the last 4 decades, we came up with a vision to become the engine that powers the future of mobility. So you can see the core business, which is what I shared in the previous slide, being in the middle. And what we do in future mobility is basically a combination of what we call venture investing and venture building. Starting from the top of the slide, the 12 o'clock, we have an accelerator, which we call Move SG. So this accelerator works very closely with startups in the mobility space, as well as corporates who are keen to look at innovation. The key purpose of this accelerator is not just to get in touch with the latest trends in mobility, but it's also to build a treasure trove of insights, and being able to share these future mobility insights with the rest of the world. So moving down to the 3 o'clock side, that's where venture investing comes in. So this is our venture capital fund. We started off with a single LP fund, and now we're moving into one where we are partnering with a major automotive player as a co-GP. And the idea here is to invest in early stage startups and to power the growth of these startups. And through these investments, we are able to get insights on the latest technologies, as well as the latest players in the space. And using this knowledge, we decide on companies that we want to build on our own. And this is what we call venture building. So today we have 3 companies in the venture building space. The first is called SWAT Mobility. My CEO started this about 6 years ago. This company has holds a few world records in solving of this problem called the pickup and delivery with time window problem, which basically measures the capability to move the most amount of things using the least amount of assets in the shortest period of time. So the things could be people, could be goods. The assets could be buses, it could be lorries and trucks. So basically what we do in SWAT is to empower the world to move more with less. I'll share some examples later in terms of how we do this and how it also contributes greatly to a more sustainable world. So the second venture build is called X Square in the middle. Basically, this is an intelligent warehousing and autonomous forklift company. There is also a sustainability element there, in the sense that if you use autonomous forklifts, you do not have a bunch of drivers coming into the warehouse 3 times a day and taking up precious transportation space, and also contributing to carbon emissions. The third venture build that we have is a company called Blue SG. This was an acquisition, so we bought this company from a French company called Bolloré in October of last year. This is a fully electric car sharing service, and we did benefit from a slight discount in our interest rate when financing our fleet of 750 vehicles, which will be going to 1,000 vehicles by the end of the year. And last but not least, so I spoke about the accelerator, venture investing, venture building. We also have another business unit which we are starting, which is called the Tech Talent Hub. So again, there is a sustainability element to this. As we all know, hiring and bringing in tech talent is a very expensive exercise, and Singapore does not, have the amount of space to accommodate so many people to come in from overseas. So we've come up with an innovative model of undertaking product development projects with Singapore as a base to manage the projects, but tapping on technology talents from all over the world, right? So that is the last piece to the puzzle. And with this, we also aim to create a library of intellectual property, and hopefully we can use that library to create more venture builds to solve more mobility problems for the world, right? What I wanted to share was that we heard from the last three speakers the very big projects, in solar and renewables. What we do here, are massive projects from a technology point of view, but it takes a lot more effort, but it does contribute also significantly to the reduction of carbon footprint to sustainability. So I will just very quickly go into three small case studies from SWOT, just to illustrate how using technology and in mobility space we can contribute towards sustainability, and there are potential financing opportunities that we can discuss as well. So next slide, please. So this is one example of one of the customers of SWOT Mobility. So we work with a company called Sagawa, which is one of the largest logistics providers in Japan. So today they dispatch their vehicles manually, and they take a lot of manpower just to allocate the vehicles and routing, etc. And it's very inefficient. So using our algorithm, we are able to bring them cost savings in manpower. We are able to reduce carbon emissions by 65%, based on the vehicle count, and we even reduce the mileage on the vehicles. And on top of that, there is also a social element here, where the veterans that are near retirement age continue to build new skills to be relevant. Next slide, please. So this is another example with Toyota, Daihatsu Engineering and Manufacturing. This is a Thai project. So I was asked to share some regional projects. So we're looking into Thailand as well. So again, in this case study, you see savings in terms of transport costs, you see reduced carbon emissions, and you see empowerment of the employees, and improving the employees' well-being. Next slide, please. And this is a case study in the Philippines. So in Philippines, there's a very big BPO industry. So you have 1 million employees that move around to support these operations. So you can see, for this project alone, how complex it is. There's 18 different shift timings, 20 different office sites. The employees actually take about 2 hours to get to work because they have to queue up to take the jeepneys and take the MRT to work. If you've seen some of those photos, it's quite different and quite hard for us to imagine from being from a country like Singapore. So same thing, cost savings from manual planning, increased vehicle utilization, reducing mileage, and improving the well-being of the employees. So that's kind of the end of the sharing of the case studies. And I think for GoBell, we do think that there is still a small gap in terms of financing of mobility-related solutions. Most of the banks that we talk to look at things from a very literal perspective. I'm happy to hear from William that there's so many angles that he's looking at. But I think if you expand the horizon to look at projects where technology has made things more efficient, resulting in lower carbon emissions, beyond the deployment of large-scale infrastructure, I think there's a lot of opportunities. And for GoBell, we are playing a huge part in this to make smart cities smarter and lower carbon emissions in smart cities, not just in Singapore, but in the Southeast Asia region as well. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to engaging with the audience in the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tay, for insightful sharing. Participants have benefited by learning about the future of mobility and how we can all contribute to building a green economy. If you are a Singapore company exploring green financing projects or have any questions regarding green financing, do sign up for our free business consultation session. Simply email my colleague Chi Hao, and the representatives from SBF will be happy to meet you to offer a tailored consultation session after this webinar. There will be an upcoming festival on India. If you are interested, please scan the QR code provided on the slide to register or contact us for more information. We are proud to announce that we will be the strategic partner for the World City Summit 2022, held from 31st July to 3rd August. If you are interested, please scan the QR code provided on the slide to register or contact us for more information. We've come to the end of today's session. We hope that this webinar has provided information and inspired your organization. On behalf of the Singapore Business Federation, we would like to thank everyone for making this event a success. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again.